Hi everyone, it's Janelle here from Amplified Customer Experience, and today we're going to dive deep on the topic of voice of the customer. With us, we have Stacy Sherman, and she is known for humanizing business. She's been in the experience industry for more than 20 years. She's both a strategist and a practitioner, and she is currently the Director of Customer Experience and Employee Engagement at Schindler Elevator. And she also has her own customer experience website called DoingCXRight. So I'm so happy to have Stacy here today. I'm going to let her tell us a little bit more about her experience, specifically with Voice of the Customer program.
Yes, thank you for having me today. I'm so happy to be here and share with the world my favorite topic, which is customer experience. And it definitely has a big component of employee experience because happy employee, happy customer. But I love talking about it, and particularly today, I believe we were sharing a common ground around the topic of voice of customer and what that means. And I've had different roles in different companies, small companies, big companies, focused on voice of customer. So I can tell you a lot about that.
Great. I'm so looking forward to digging in. And I know, when I talk to people, so many people believe that voice of the customer is just a survey. And I know when you and I were getting ready for this, we were talking about debunking that myth. So let's dive in and talk about, what does a real voice of the customer program look like?
Yes. So first I want to highlight where I've been in my professional journey, because it will shed some light on how I go about it and what I think about from those different experiences. So first is voice of customer in a new product development organization. So when I was at Verizon, as an example, we were developing new products. Before they went out the door, we would bring customers, infuse their voice at the table before a new product, a new feature, a new service delivery, and make sure that we were producing something that customers really want, our target personas. So that's one area where voice of customer is so impactful before you invest so much money into something new. The second area of voice of customer, I was in a role where it was specific to a channel. And what I mean by that is I was in the e-commerce division. And so we had millions of people come to a website. Well, we want to make sure they do what we want them to do, whether it's learn or buy online or buy and pick up at a store, whatever that goal is. So one of the roles is capturing the customer voice at different points of the website experience and understanding where were they stuck, what more information did they want. Sometimes they would put something in their shopping cart and leave and abandon. Why? They would add to cart and couldn't proceed. What happened? And I would do these A/B tests, and I would do surveys, and I would do intercept studies, a whole bunch of ways to get the feedback. But what I'm getting at is getting the voice of customer in a particular channel. If it's retail, if it's digital, it's important to narrow in, laser in. And then the third point of voice of customer is understanding, typically in a sales heavy organization. So making sure that you're really partnering with your front line and your field and understanding from their point of view, because they're with customers every day, what does the customer needs? What are their pain points? Get the employee view. But I must stress that the employee view is not the customer view. You need both. So those are three different areas that I've worked in to get voice of customer.
That's you have such great diverse experience, and I'd love to dig in and see kind of what are some of the common trends or themes that you noticed, or what are the common hallmarks of a good solid voice of the customer program?
The best ones I've seen are where the company is getting the customer's feedback at every what we call moment of truth. So think of a customer journey. from when they learn, they become aware of a product or service, to then buy. How is that experience? And then and the onboarding experience from those stages to when the customer gets and uses their what they bought. And so important is when they get help or when they need help. How easy is that? How difficult is it? So it's the customer journey, and the best in class companies are getting feedback along the journey, because if the beginning of the journey is great, but then getting help is so difficult, that may impact them staying or leaving. So yeah, the whole journey matters.
So if I can reiterate, it's making sure that you're collecting feedback in whatever form you're using, preferably more than just a survey,
Right.
at each step of the customer journey, at those moments of truth or those moments of impact.
Correct. Yes. And now going to what you said about it's not just a survey. I hope all your listeners really think about that and take that as an action, because yes, surveys, which is solicited feedback, is a great source. And it could be e-survey, it could be a phone survey, whichever. But that's not the only voice of customer insight to drive business decisions. There's a lot of chatter, unsolicited, social media. There's a lot of ratings and reviews. You have to pay attention to that. In addition to your own internal data, if you have, let's say, online chat, for example, you need to capture what are the conversations that the customers are talking to about the reps, and aggregate that and really look at what's the voice of customer in its entirety, not just one point.
So you're getting at the 360-degree view of the customer.
Yes.
So could you dive in on some of the different tactics that you've used?
Yes. So in the different companies I've been at, some have big budgets and some have really small. And I say that because it really makes a difference in the tools and the platforms that you can use. But there's many places where they'll buy off the shelf platforms, and then some companies build their own. And honestly, I'm agnostic in terms of vendors. I've used so many, and I don't want to pitch one over another, but as long as you're using some platform that really helps listen to what customers are saying, it could be duct taped together, or it can be an expensive platform, but it's important.
So that kind of covers off the listening side of things, making sure that you have a platform or program or duct tape in place to listen to your customers. One of the questions I get asked a lot by my clients is they're struggling to make that leap from listening to insight, then to either action or impact. Do you have any recommendations on what you've seen work?
Yes. So it's a good point. If you're going to ask customers about what they think and feel, you have to do something with it. Otherwise, don't ask, don't waste their time. And I've been in those situations before. Fortunately, I've been mostly in cases where the feedback is, and especially where I work now, it's taken very seriously, and it gets to the hands of the right people quickly. And so in my case, it's getting it to the sales force and making sure that they know what the customers are saying, and then they can close the loop, follow up in person. Sometimes it's, there's various channels how you follow up, but the point is that everyone needs to understand their customer at a local level and at a national level. And however companies do it is fine, as long as it's done. That's my point.
So I think you mentioned an interesting point that I just want to, something I want to pull on a little bit more, and that's you said something about taking it over to the sales team, and I've had this conversation with so many people, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. Who owns that insight? So the CX team conceivably is they're listening and they're reviewing the data, they're generating the insights. Who then is responsible for making sure that something happens with that insight?
Yeah, it's a really good debatable topic. So my belief and where I've worked that works in terms of building a customer-centric culture, the answer is everyone owns customer experience and the KPIs and the satisfaction scores. Everyone owns it. One person, one department can't alone. And I really like when companies tie those results to everybody in terms of their objectives and performance reviews, because then everybody cares. They should care anyway, but sometimes you have to enforce it like any other key performance indicator. So it's a teaming effort. It absolutely is teaming. So the customer experience team will get the insights, but then we have to partner very closely with the people that have the relationship directly with the customer. And that's more of a business to business slant versus a business to customer. You know, that's a different organizational structure, how that would work. But either way, I think anytime there's a front line, they have to be your partners.
And I think, from my perspective, and just there's so much happening in the CX space right now in terms of there being questions about the role of CX and the ROI is contributing to, top line or the bottom line. I would suggest to any CX practitioner that you own that insight and you make sure you document the ROI on it to validate your role in the company and in helping amplify the business results. So I know so many people throw it over the fence. So many people have the perspective that CX kind of ends at the insight and that it's the business unit or the functional area that's responsible for the execution. I'd argue that at this point where we're at right now, it's more important than ever for those CX practitioners and strategists to keep their hands in the pie, so to speak. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. But I'll also say I think we're all figuring it out. We're all, there's a lot of ways to demonstrate that tangible number, but we're all still figuring out what's the right formula. I can say that when you slice and dice the data, it's very apparent that promoters have a certain value of revenue versus detractors. And it's common sense and the numbers do show it. But in terms of ongoing ROI calculations, I think we're figuring it out. And I know we will collectively sharing best practices on how to do that. But I know that customers that we're going to leave and give you that feedback and you're able to stop and retain, that churn. I've seen that so many times and that's really tangible. I mean, that's clear cut when you're able to save those or win back those that were lost because of customer experience and that program that you introduce and follow through.
Hey, thanks for your perspective on that topic. I know there's been so much debate. You and I were talking about it before this call. I want to change gears a little bit and dig into something that you mentioned, that when you're building a voice of the customer program, it's also important to consider the voice of the employee.
Yes.
So can you elaborate on that and how you've seen that successfully executed in the past?
Yes, I know that voice of employee is so important for a couple of reasons. One is, especially the front line, they're with their customers every day and they know they have so much information about their customer needs. So it's smart to include them at the table. With that said, it also, as you're building a customer-centric culture, making employees feel that they are valued and they're important. And if you want them to own the customer experience, you have to include their views because they're so close to it. So they go hand in hand. And it's all part of the culture. It starts with the top down, but it's the bottoms up too, and empowering people and making them part of the process.
So we've talked about listening, hearing from your customers and from your employees, doing that analysis to generate insights, and then creating that impact or that action from those insights. Now, how do we close the loop with both the employees and with the customers?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. In some companies, there was an outside company that called customers and then would feed that insight to the company, the managers, and they like sometimes it's an outsourced solution that they partner and do it for them. In many cases, it's done in-house. My preference is in-house because we know the customer best. But it can be a tedious process because there's a lot to get the feedback and to get it to the right hands. But it can be many ways. It can be, you can have field champions and they own those insights and partner with the local areas. You can have a centralized team and they have to go follow up with the customer or in partnership with the account manager. In a B2C world, it may be a direct connection to the customer. It may be a direct email. It may be an outreach phone conversation. I mean, there's many ways to actually take the data and go follow up. I think too often we try to overcomplicate it, but basically at its simplest form, you get data, you get feedback, you go back to the people who gave it to you, and when you look at the intelligence at scale, and then you give it to the product managers, marketing managers, process teams to make improvements based on lots of feedback that are reoccurring themes. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I think it's such a valuable step that so many companies, just because it's a bit tedious and onerous, they forget about it, or they opt to, not follow up or close the loop with their customers. And I think it's so important to make sure that you have that closed loop feedback process, whatever it is, whatever works for your business.
Agree. And I believe in a test, analyze, adjust, repeat approach. So test a couple different ways and see how that works. And if it is, keep, investing in that method. And if not, test other ways. And there's lots of ways to get to fall through, but it's the point of budget, high budget to do it.
Great. So as we wrap this up, what do you think that people are forgetting to think about when they're thinking about their Voice of the Customer programs?
I would say that focus on your most strategic customers, but don't forget the little ones too, because a lot of little ones add up to big ones. And a customer is a customer and they all matter. And I think that I know it shows to a customer that the company cares what I have to say. And it sends a message. Besides you being able to improve your own your own internal ways, it sends a message to customers. And I think that by itself makes them loyal, and it makes them refer and tell others, assuming their experience gets better, or you show them you did something, we heard you. It can be really a powerful vehicle to win and retain customers and that partnership, that relationship. It just builds trust. It's important.
Totally agree. Thanks so much, Stacy. And for those of you that are still watching, and if you're interested in following Stacy on her blog or contacting her directly, her website is DoingCXRight, and her contact information is below. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.